Hi, everyone. So this is really exciting. This is my third Elevate, so it's great to be here up on the stage. I'm going to be talking today, like everyone else here, about digital transformation. And trying to take a slightly different approach, how to accelerate your digital roadmap through a practical value stream approach. So there's been a lot of great talks, and a lot of great insight and a lot of great ways of looking at digital transformation because it's such a broad thing. It's about human behavior, it's about management, it's about leadership, it's about teams, it's about practices and instincts and experience. It's about letting go of certainty and trying to move into a future where you don't know the answers, but you want to be ready to know the answers and figure them out as you go along. So there's a lot of really interesting things there. There was a comment earlier today, only 16% of digital transformation efforts are deemed to have delivered value. Only 3% of digital opportunities are being addressed. And the question is, why is this? And where have we seen this before? And how do we sort of move forward? So I started my career in electrical engineering a long, long time ago. And in my very first semester, there was a book called The Reckoning, which is really dramatic and it's like very, very like exciting. And it was by David Halberstam, and it was a comparative history of Ford and Nissan and the onslaught of lean manufacturing, supply chain, value streams, quality-obsessed practices in North American industry and the seismic effects that had. And it's pretty remarkable, but in 1988, and in the 80s, this was a big thing. This was a huge thing. There was a book published in 1982 called Out of the Crisis. And it was written by W. Edwards Deming, who is credited with having taught a lot of the quality and lean manufacturing and management practices to the Japanese post-World War II, along with Joseph Juran and Philip Crosby and all these other sort of people who were foundational in the advent of a quality approach to manufacturing, which sort of begat Toyota Production System and lean manufacturing. So we have The Reckoning, we have Out of the Crisis. And then there was a book that became very, very popular in describing sort of lean and the concept of a value stream. And it was called The Goal: Lean Manufacturing in a Novel. And I had this fantastic experience at work about a year ago. So I'm the CEO of Wrangle, and we build things, but I'm the CEO, so I'm supposed to have a certain perspective on things. And I was talking with two of our amazing developers, and they walked up to me, they rolled right up to me, and I hadn't read this book in 20 years, and they said, what's Wrangle's goal? What's the goal at Wrangle? And I looked at them, I'm like, I know that. I started the company, right? It's to create value and make the world a better place through digital software. And they said, no, it's not. And I said, yeah, it is. Like, we're a purpose-driven company. We want to create valuable things, and we want to focus on continuous improvement and creating value through digital stuff. And it's like, no, you're wrong. And it's like, okay. I go, what is it? And it's like, the purpose of Wrangle is to make money. And it's like, no, it's not. I mean, we want to stay in business, but the goal is to deliver value to people. But the point is, how do you measure value? And ultimately, that is value, is achieving purpose, and you can't forget that. And so if you take a step back and you read the goal again, there's a comment in there that, and the whole story revolves around this concept: any improvement made to a process efficiency before or after a bottleneck only makes the overall efficiency of the process worse, which is a pretty complicated statement to parse, but it's also a pretty profound one, and one that a lot of people are fairly familiar with nowadays in systems thinking, where you have a local optimization and a local maximum, which makes it feel like you're fixing things, but you're actually not, because you're creating a blocker. About 20 years ago, I was working at a large retailer on a global merchandising solution, and one of the business partners I was working with told me this great story about a greeting card manufacturer that took 18 months to get greeting cards onto the shelves, and like a little piece of paper, a little bit of copy, a little bit of printing, a little bit of shipping. And that was driving them sort of crazy because there was new humor coming out and new ideas and new best practices, but any idea that went into the process came out 18 months later. So they decided to figure it all out, and they brought in some business process consultants, and they talked to every single group about what they needed to do their job better. And then they took all of that input and they processed it, and you can probably all guess what came out of that. Instead of 18 months, it now took 2 years, according to the stated process. Because what they were doing was improving efficiency from a step in the process, but not for the overall system. And a lot of those instinctive local optimizations are based upon an instinct about making things run smoother, but often it's the other way you remove to make things go faster and smoother. So, product. And we have an amazing history of amazing product management in the industry. I was a product manager for a number of years, Silicon Valley product, and the practices of product are quite fascinating. But when you think about it, here's a famous list from Marty Kagan, Silicon Valley Product Group, the 4 product risks: value risk, usability risk, feasibility risk, business viability risk, plus so many more considerations. Code quality, design quality, user, scalability. Like there's a lot of considerations. We build the wrong thing sometimes. We build the right thing, but it's no longer the right thing because it took so long. We build the right thing, but we're late to market. Someone else beats us to it. And if you optimize for this, because this is sort of what we're thinking about, then what does that impact downstream? Lean startup became very, very popular for complex markets, and I like to say complex humans. Hypothesis-driven development, humility in the face of complexity, find product market fit at lowest cost, scale. But if everybody who cares about this optimizes for this, what does that mean? Going back to that concept of the goal, where if you improve the efficiency of something before or after a bottleneck, it actually hurts the system. So if you're wondering why digital transformation spins and struggles and why it's so hard to make progress, this is another angle on that I think is very interesting. Because it's still not working. It's almost like entropy, or I've heard people talk about it as like trying to push water up a hill. We make progress in one area, but we regress in another. So one way of thinking about it, it's digital, not product, teams, not methodology. So now we're getting very agile manifesto here. And I like to use the term digital because simply, in some respects, it's just a different word. It's not product, but it encompasses more than product. It encompasses the organization, a digital-first organization. So product misses organizational needs. There's brand. One of the most fascinating conversations is anytime I would talk with a large enterprise, they asked if we had any experience with dealing with large companies because smaller companies really didn't get it. That there was the protecting the brand is first and foremost the most important thing. And how you do that's a complicated process. So now we're starting to see the evolution of this into enablement technologies like design systems, where we can capture brand principles in an actionable manner so frontline teams don't have to get stuck in a slow, cumbersome, bureaucratic brand approval process. And once you do that, now you can start to streamline the design process and other processes and get more speed in the process. Budgeting is a huge impact. Permission to do something. So brand is one thing, budget's another, but everybody is very, very aware of what everyone else does in other groups. And there's a real understanding of broader permissions that are important. Vision and strategic clarity. How does it roll up into the big organizational goals? And then capability, competency, and capacity. Almost every product management framework I've seen never accounts for the organizational capability, competency, or capacity. Most companies have the capability, but they don't have the capacity. And without solving for that, things will constantly break. You won't see the value that you're looking for. So you have to understand capacity. How do you understand capacity? How are things flowing? If you think in terms of product risks, I talked about a few: permissions, scalability, cost. Do you have the capacity? So digital is harder than product because you're dealing with the product market complexity, you're removing an entrepreneur from the mix, and you're dealing with the organizational complexity. It's a completely different game. It's a completely different game with a completely different solution. So what normally happens, we have a success, we list the things we see after the success, maybe in a different field, maybe in Silicon Valley, we pretend that they were the cause of the success, and we optimize them. We optimize them without understanding the overall system and the bottlenecks. So we may, in fact, be destabilizing the process. This is what waterfall is. This is how waterfall methodologies, more requirements, more documentation, more planning, more architecture. We're optimizing for things that seem to be driving success, but they're not, because as that work flows through the system, it's not translatable to the next stage, it's not understandable, it's not executable, it's not measurable. We don't actually know if we're delivering value. So then they slow us down more and stop teams from owning and solving the right problems. So digital transformation, there's two ways of looking at it. One is the outside in, which is fantastic. But the more important or equally important way is the inside out. So just as we talk about customer experience in markets, what about executive stakeholder experience, who now have to govern a large organization with a different set of information? And what about the teams? And there's been an amazing amount of learning in this space. I was sitting on a flight with someone who did training for leadership in the federal government. And we talked for about, I think, almost 4 hours. We were flying from Vancouver to Toronto. And he was a manager in the Ottawa-based startups in the early 80s. And he said it was amazing. Back then, there was nothing about people in management. It was all about process. And so there was that sort of major learning in just 20 years, and which is interesting, because if you go back to Edward Deming, 1982, out of the crisis. By the way, he was 82 years old when he wrote that book. That was after a very, very long career. And now we've built all these people practices, and with that, obviously, as we do more research and learn more, we understand about what makes teams start to become really more effective and really be able to lean into things. So, what is the solution? Well, there is no the solution, but there are interesting approaches and thoughts and considerations. Going back to about 2000, extreme programming. And this addressed a lot of these core issues by forming teams and maximizing certain practices to get better quality architecture, feedback, accuracy, and value. And then lean startup rolled in the business model, product market fit, the hypothesis-driven development, and what I call product theory. So you're building a whole theory of the product, the market, the opportunity, where value is, what the risk is, what the cost is, and you are experimentally validating that theory to create the most robust theory and the most robust understanding of that, so you can execute like a startup in an entrepreneurial way. And then there's what I'm calling lean digital, for lack of a better term, which is where we are today. If you take the goal, if you take lean, if you take agile, and you think about what we're trying to do, we're trying to go from the C-suite to the customer in a value stream, or a set of value streams, where we're adding value, measuring value, and we understand what that means to the customer, to the team, and to the executives who are responsible for budget, strategy, vision, direction. The problem is the complexity of this is now off the charts. And so you have a team that's being tasked to execute, and the more you optimize downstream or upstream of the team, the less they actually understand, because now they're getting orders and they're not building a shared understanding. They're not learning, they're not experimenting, they're not accountable for the outcome. So what I like to call that is there's a group theory. You got your product theory, but now you need this group theory. You need a high-performing cross-functional team. And they do that by working together, trusting each other. And when you see a team like this working, one team member can communicate to another team member with 2 or 3 words, and they just nod and they do it. And that's where, the reason they can do that is not because they sort of went to lunch before they kicked off the project, or they've been working together for a long time, though that's important, but they share common mental models, a common understanding of what they're doing as a team. And then you have the customer, the C-suite, the value stream, and that's the domain theory. So there's a great essay from years ago called Architecture is Theory Building, because the theory of what you're building is actually what you're building. It's not technology, it's not product, it's an understanding and all those little decisions that go into it. So now you have a team that works really, really well together, so that's culture eats strategy for breakfast, who has a deep understanding of the domain that they're solving against, and now they're able to be adaptive against complexity and extremely high performing. If you don't get to that sort of trinity of team, group theory, domain theory, you can't be adaptive against complexity because you don't own or understand enough of that complexity to actually be able to do anything meaningful. So complex problems demand an adaptive learning approach. That includes teams over methodologies. The complexity and ease of digital demands continuous learning, creativity, and problem solving. We're solving a domain in its theory, not just the technology. And value stream optimization over stage optimization. How do we avoid compromising our effectiveness in reaching the goal of adding value? Well, if everything's changing all the time, and when a team kicks off a project, and when the team finishes a project, and there's no adaptation, no learning, then they're not going to be able to do the right thing. How do we measure alignment and value creation in a complex organization that spans the C-suite to the customer experience? And how do we give permission, trust, and objectives to the right teams having the right understanding? So there's all kinds of things we can do in different aspects of a digital transformation, but the ultimate thing is how do we deliver against our goals and our objectives? And that's about teams, and that's about the value streams within a company, because without that, entropy, confusion, misalignment, friction, handoffs, different goals, different alignment will all conspire to slow things down. As an example, just working in a small company, working on a website, if you have 4 people who have to sign off on something, you go from a 30-minute turnaround to probably 2 weeks, simply because the chance of getting 4 people who are busy, who are not on the team together to be able to agree to something is almost impossible. And that causes people to stop even wanting to think about it. They're not even going to recommend a change because now they know they got to run the gauntlet to try to get a conversation. And those conversations will spiral because people will bring up other perspectives because they're not very aligned to begin with. So that's the value stream. That's how work gets done. That's how we add value. And if we're not solving for that, we leave all this dysfunction in place and we think things are great because everyone's doing their job as best they can. So we want to accelerate value. A couple of common sort of lean, agile sort of endeavors, reduce work in progress. So you can go deeper into meaning and solutions, adaptive learning. You want to reduce cycle time so you can get feedback quicker and force issues to the surface. Lean just-in-time principles. The difference between going from a 4-week cycle time or sprint to a 2-week is an order of magnitude, and going from 2 weeks to 1 is a huge jump again, because you can't go faster unless you solve problems. So you don't solve problems to go faster, you go faster to surface and solve the problems. That's again where a value stream comes to play. You try to go faster and you learn and you solve those problems. Continuous improvement, so there's constant learning, improvement, and adaptation in team and the value stream. And quality, going back to lean manufacturing, it's free and it's strategic. So we allow for fast adaptation and adding more value. So this is where a deep understanding of the system is important, because quality is often compromised. And sometimes it makes sense. If you have a 6-week project, you want to get in market, you're going to replace it, you can incur debt and replace it in the future. But quality is the most singularly profound strategic advantage any company can take to generating value. And it's the heart of any kind of digital transformation. So high-performing teams, and there's been just so much learning about this. There's the Google Project Oxygen, team safety, psychological safety, how teams bond, how co-locating teams creates trust and communication shortcuts. You start creating a team mind to go with the individual minds. And if we talk about solving complex problems that are really cross-domain, cross-functional, no individual can solve it. And if they all solve in their silos, they're solving it to the wrong optimization. A team is the only way to do this. So you need to build safety, share vulnerability so people know how they can trust each other, communicate, and where everyone stands and how they work, and establish purpose. And if you have a team that's been built, this enables a high-performing team. You've established purpose. Now this is sort of foundational, and you start looking at mastering the value stream that the team is working against. So value stream's not digital. And some of the principles, I talked a little bit about this. Principle number 1 actually should be quality, because I just said that, but that comes later. Principle 1 is speed. Speed trumps being right because it teaches you to be right. And this is counterintuitive. This is really taking a leap of faith, and this has been a big challenge. And quality definitely should be first. It's a battle against entropy. Speed is learning. Because if you're going fast and you're not learning, you're crashing. So not too fast, but the right speed. Speed is identifying and facing process issues that need to be removed. Speed is team alignment to a single goal. So if the team can move forward, the team is aligning. So this is where actually creating a little bit of tension, creating stretch goals for a team, creates the actual team dynamics that you're looking for, because problem solving is how you build trust. Speed is prioritization. You have to be able to prioritize, simplify, identify what you need to do next. And speed is creativity and the best solution by the team, because now you're working together, solving problems, moving fast, and you're starting to see the pattern of the situation right in front of you, as opposed to the pattern of the rules and regulations and the bureaucracy and the politics and the other considerations in large human sort of organizations. Principle 2, which is principle 1, is quality. So quality enables speed and turning corners as needed. Can't overemphasize that. Quality is foundational. So the battle against needing to be certain or to prematurely optimize in complex markets. If you've built something that's high quality, you can adapt. Quality maximizes optionality. That's the biggest thing in a complex, competitive digital market where you don't know what's coming next. Customer experience, product market fit, and scalability. Quality enables all of those. If you compromise on quality, you're going to have to be right in your first guess, or mostly right, because otherwise it's going to be too expensive to get where you need to go. Quality is free. So there's this old project management maxim that you can have cost, schedule, or quality. That is complete bullshit. That is not true. That got disproven by Deming, by Duran. Poor quality is very expensive because you pay for it later. Quality is free if it's done right. Quality is strategic. It maximizes optionality. And quality is your ultimate lever. Principle 3, this is optimizing your value stream. It's your delivery, your flow. How do you constantly improve, coach, support, train, enable, measure, report? You want consistent speed and quality, and you want the learnings to be continuously flowing and the team continuously adapting. So you're training, teaming, traction, and continuous improvement of your teams and your value stream. This is the most often underinvested in because it causes hard changes to existing processes and demands new capabilities, competencies, and capacity. It's all about delivery. It's all about finding and optimizing and continuously improving your value stream and your team's ability to execute in that value stream. And this is a very, very different way of working. And this is one of the foundational things in a digital transformation. Principle 4 is about value, building around value. Value is the goal. The Pareto principle rules here. 80% of the value from 20% of the effort. One of the biggest challenges with functional specifications and complete high fidelity designs is that you've mixed all the low, medium, and high pieces of value, and you have no ability to separate them and learn and prioritize, so you're investing poorly. Whereas if you prioritize to the things that are obviously the most value, you get 80% of the value for 20% of the effort, and then from what you learn, you do it again and again. You can do that in a value stream. You cannot do that outside of a value stream because the silos stop you from doing that. So if you do that math, you can start to see some of the value there. Enable teams that can own the end-to-end answer to this question, because they're the only ones who can answer it. The silos can't answer it. The silos are the reason we can't answer the question, because we don't have that model, that shared model that integrates all of the different things that we need to do and can make those decisions at the point of work. Principle 5, once you have a value stream, you can measure the right things and respond to the right things. Measurement's the only truth in complex systems, but it has to be the right measurement. You have to watch for vanity metrics per lean startup, or gaps in measurement regarding the value stream and the delivery of value. You have to know what you're measuring and why. And continuous improvement. Teams and value systems are evolved, not made. This is probably as fundamental as quality. There's so many things in the tacit understanding and the teaming and the ability to actually understand and solve the problems that need to be solved. So it protects against entropy and wishful thinking optimizations. Those two things are probably, they manifest in silos. It's impossible to eliminate them unless you can get to speed. And team, excellence is in the team, not a center of excellence. The team has to hold the excellence. If you're looking at diagrams or seeking permission, you don't have a team. And I will go through this a little bit quickly now because I'm running a little late. But how to accelerate a digital roadmap, I think we covered most of it. Leadership, value streams, teams and culture, learning and growth, enablement, those are the objectives, and then the value stream. Mission clarity and the goal, the team holding the domain theory, quality, delivery, design, technology, continuous improvement. So now you're doing a digital transformation through accelerating a digital roadmap, applying fundamental principles that achieve the outcomes and get through the silos, get through the noise, and create the teams that can actually do the work. You can start with either. You can build it or partner to it. But companies have to be all in on team and value streams. If you're half in on each, the wheels are going to spin and we're going to stay at 16% of digital transformation success. Thank you.